huge financial orgasm that is culminating from the consummation of an unholy and incestuous marriage of big money and big government. And that's what you're seeing. Right now, you're witnessing the consummation of this marriage that's been in the works for the last almost 100 years.
Yeah, they're butchering us. They're just stealing everything forever, bankrupting it, and then hoarding it all while saying, quote, headline, world leaders are desperate to fix things. World leaders, you find the exact headline here.
Well, we're trying to do something about that. And if I can mention that we've got Operation Stop Thief scheduled for this April 15th. Already we have Stop Thief groups registered on truthattack.org to cover over 1,000 post offices across the country on April 15th. They'll be out there with signs saying, "What income tax?" truthattack.org, and they'll be handing out flyers telling people you've just been scammed. Once a year, the government herds up all the sheeple for us, and they run them through the squeeze chutes, and that gives us a chance to inoculate them with some truth.
Well, that's a good analogy. Like the elite see them as cattle, so we're there trying to feed them red pills so they go from being cattle back to human beings. Now, here it is. Desperate world leaders meet on economic woes, AP. Desperate but divided on ways to lift their nations from economic misery, world leaders converge for an emergency summit Tuesday, holding scant hopes of finding a magic bullet solution. See, they say it's only going to get worse, but their solution, when you read further, is a world government ruled by the banks that you pay your carbon taxes to, Tommy Cryer.
Their solution is more problem. The problem is the government. And so they want to have more problem. It's kind of like when they were bleeding George Washington. We bled him 3 times, and he just keeps getting weaker. Let's bleed him again. And and he died. That's what's going to happen to us. Our way of life is going to die. Our freedom is already withered on the branch, and it's falling off. I'm in a state of angst over this, and I have never seen American people more angst-ridden, more anxious, more dreading or fearful than they were. And I don't know if you recall this or not, but the Cuban Missile Crisis is the last time I've seen people this frightened, this concerned.
Well, they better be, because the elite terrorized people, said the markets were in trouble, said we were going to have a depression, everything plunged. They got unlimited money, and then they hoard it, and then cut off liquidity on cars, loans, homes, everything by design. And it's even coming out in the major press that they're making money off this, that this is their consolidation.
Well, not only that, but they're cutting what our little take is on the share crop.
Yes.
They're sharecropping us, but they're cutting our share. And the way they do it is that, when I started working, Alex, the minimum wage was $1.60 an hour. Now, back then, that $1.60 was backed up with silver still. However, right now, minimum wage is 21 cents an hour. People think it's 5 something, but an FRN is only worth about 4 cents.
Now, let me stop you.
They're working for 21 cents an hour, as opposed to $1.60 40 years ago.
Now, let me stop you. Take your time. Explain that. With inflation, getting paid, and I've seen different actuaries and numbers, but what were you getting paid 40-something years ago?
$1.60.
Okay, $1.60 would have been the equivalent of what, about $20 an hour?
Yeah, about now. If you multiply it, the factor is 20 to 1. So actually, back then, I was making the equivalent today on minimum wage. I was making the equivalent today of 1.6 times 20.
So you're making $30.
I'm making $32 an hour.
Okay, $32 an hour. That's what inflation. So we've had this gradual inflation that was bad enough.
We've really had no inflation, Alex, because if I've got a silver dollar in my pocket, it was minted in 1923. I've carried it in my pocket. It's slick as a whistle because I've carried it for 50 years. But in 1923, the day it was minted, it would have bought 10 loaves of bread. Right now, you could take that same silver dollar and probably buy 15 loaves of bread.
No, exactly. When I said inflation, I meant the Federal Reserve private bank unit.
I understand what you mean, but if we would take a look at the dollar, a dollar is still, will buy a dollar's worth at least. And, what we're looking at is play money. You can't inflate money that has no value. All you can do is dilute it. And that's what we're seeing. They keep pouring water in the soup pot, and now you can see the bottom of the pot, and they're saying live off of that. We're like slaves that have been giving out our rations, and the rations keep having more water and less soup.
Well, no, that's true, but the bankers up front, when they're first evaluating, they buy real assets with the money they create out of nothing, and then now they're even trying to reduce the amount of reduced soup we get.
And that same power that you're talking about, just acquired by taking over Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, just acquired mortgages on over half of America's households. Is it just me, or is this scary?
Well, did you see Obama seize basically General Motors? He fired the director. He said, you get out of there. You didn't do what I want. And now he's going to have that go under government and private banking control that controls him. And he's saying they may start seizing other companies, not just banks. So this is openly with the government acting as the thug for the bankers to just come out and grab everything.
Exactly. And what we're going from, we've seen the transition to fascism with this unholy marriage of big business and big government. But now, big government is starting to eat its partner. And because the real master over these two is the Federal Reserve. And the bankers behind it.
And the bankers are offshore. They don't care if they destroy Europe and the United States. That gives them the power.
They're looking at their world assets, the hard assets you were talking about. You couldn't be more correct in your analysis, Alex. They go out, and they're not dealing in dollars that devalue. They're dealing in real assets that have value. And yet we're out here playing with this monopoly money and saying, ain't we rich? Well, print us some more. We'll get richer.
Exactly. And they're passing the more property taxes and franchise taxes and business taxes right here in Texas. And the businesses are all going out of business, and the globalists openly write white papers saying we want a post-industrial world where you're all poor people living in shacks, and they live off on armored mountains with all the high technology and the high-tech healthcare and everything. This is a tool of military financial conquest. They want to hurt you in their own documents, and that's what the public has to get. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And that's, a couple of weeks ago, Truth Tech issued a demand that they adopt a true stimulus plan to re-energize the economy by suspending the withholding and collection of the personal income tax. Not corporate, just personal. Start allowing some of this, the rest of money earned by the households to go into those households. It would save a lot of these foreclosures that are going on in the first place. But because people are unable to buy goods, other people are going out of business or out of losing their jobs, and then they can't buy goods, and they can't pay for their homes. You've got more foreclosures, more layoffs. Well, you can reverse that trend real easy just by allowing people to keep their money.
Tommy, let me ask you.
All these households, all of these boom, and then what happens whenever you've got the 30% isn't being raked off the top of every state's gross domestic product every week, and that money stays into their economy and starts to bubble and simmer and produce. The state revenues go up. The local revenues go up. They don't need to borrow and beg money from the federal government.
Let me back you up. Let me back you up.
Revenues go up on the other 80 taxes that they have. But is that press release getting any coverage?
Yeah, let me back you up on that.
Not one picked it up.
Kennedy cut taxes by 50% across the board. Tax revenues doubled. So
they've proved it too many times. Kennedy proved it. Didn't turn around. Reagan did the same thing. He proved it. To a lesser extent, George Bush the First, with his lesser extent tax cut, proved it. Revenues go up.
But let me just keep backing you up here because it's all true. It's about control. It isn't revenues. This is all fiat to them. It's done to bring in control, as you just said. But did you see the Wall Street Journal and all these articles analyzing what Obama said he's going to do?
No, I haven't seen that. I'm sorry.
He is gutting I'm sure you've heard this, though, that he's gutting the tax code to get rid of home exemptions, education exemptions, a tax raise on everybody.
Mm-hmm. Well, that I've heard about. And I'm not at all surprised about. He promised change, remember? Well, that's what we're going to have left. Change.
Man.
And even change isn't worth anything. George Harp, the lawyer that got me into all of this trouble, was by here the other day, and he said, I just had a terrible dilemma. I said, what happened, George? He says, I got out of my car, and I looked down, there was a penny